Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. It's a pleasure to be here today. As you know, we're Haskayne Consulting. My name is Heather Johnson. My colleagues are Karina Tima, Jason White, and Chuck Warnica. And we're pleased that you brought us in here today to talk about your latest acquisition at Naya Waters. Before we get into the presentation, first of all, let me congratulate you on this acquisition. What a fine company Naya is. A young company that's grown, been successful, had a few issues, but is doing very well and an excellent addition to your portfolio. One little trouble facing the water industry today is the changing face of water consumption in our world. It is a fact that the consumption of bottled water leads to some environmental damage. The bottling, the processing does have some negative implications, and the world has started to take notice. And that is going to affect the bottled water industry going forward. However, Naya, a leader, didn't shirk away, didn't hide from these, didn't ignore these issues, but instead stepped up, became a leader in environmental stewardship, putting all kinds of processes into place, recycling, monitoring the amount of water they're drawing from the stream, all of those things. An excellent, excellent step for a company to take, and it will position Naya very well to move into the future of bottled water. So, moving on to the presentation. You're going to receive a presentation from Daniel Cote very shortly, and we expect him to answer some specific questions. What will it take to meet the target that Catterton has set in terms of growth for Naya? What changes to the strategy are necessary? What should Naya do? Where should it go? Should Naya expand geographically? Is there a product line diversification called for? And lastly, what new markets to look at? When Daniel comes to speak to you, you should expect a plan from him that meets several criteria. The reason we're here is to provide an outside look, and we're hoping to help you examine what some of those criteria and some possible strategies are for Naya to pursue going forward that Daniel will present in his plan. The first thing to keep in mind is any plan that's proposed, any plan that Naya chooses to go with, has to work within Naya's capabilities, be that the source of the water, the human resources, the funds. All of it has to be within the capabilities of Naya. A plan has to be methodical and sensible, and we're going to really address that today. What is reasonable? What can Naya really do? And any plan that Naya pursues has to have quantifiable payback. Naya needs to turn a profit, it needs to grow, and it needs to return profit to Catterton. So, in short, we see the key issue facing Naya and yourself here today is how to maximize the value of this investment that you've made in Naya Waters. And to maximize that value, again, it's increased revenue and increased profits. Stepping back for a minute from the business side to Naya's philosophy. This is what has driven this company in the past and needs to drive it in the future. They've outlined 5 specific criteria that they take very seriously and hold to. And those have to do with what to do with the water resources, the people that are involved in Naya, their production and the footprint that that leaves, how to transport water, a heavy material, to all the markets, and how to best use recycling to meet their needs. However, there are some financial considerations, some investment criteria as well. You need a plan that makes sense. Naya needs to increase its sales. Naya needs to control or hopefully even reduce its costs. And most importantly, it needs to experience growth of both revenue and profit. When you put that together, we think that the new decision criteria for Naya going forward is all of those things. It has to hold to the spirit of Naya, what's created the success in the first place, and the financial, real-world business concerns that Naya needs to be aware of. Now, quickly, how do you make money in any business, for sure, but particularly in water? You need to either increase the revenues, and that could come through a variety of products, new products, selling more of your current products, moving into different types of products, product line extensions, or you could sell those products in different regions. You also need to decrease costs. And some of the major costs in this business are the manufacturing, production, bottling, that sort of thing, the distribution, and the marketing and sales. Again, Our plan that we put forward to you will address all of these, and specifically Chuck will come back to these at the end of the presentation and show how our plan has met these criteria. So our recommendation, very simply stated, is within the context of NAYA's capabilities. NAYA needs to grow revenues through a variety of ways: extending the product offering, expanding geographically to regions that make sense, leveraging that environmental leadership in the brand. A lot of money's gone into creating that environmental leadership. Now it needs to be used and leveraged. NAYA needs to control costs. That'll come in two ways: focused distribution and strategic partnerships. So with that as our recommendation, I'm going to turn it over to Karina, who's going to begin the presentation, which we've segmented the first part into some geographic strategies. And hers will focus on the heartland of NAYA's business, the Quebec market.
Thank you very much, Heather. So first of all, we want to take a quick look at the competitive landscape in your homeland, in Quebec. You've here outlined the partners that you're dealing with. Of course, there's Nestlé, which is the biggest partner in the mix. There are also some private label brands. Just some gentlemen, again, there's a decline in the market. Quebec isn't hit as hard as the other markets. However, Nestlé is going to move from Ontario into Quebec, so it's going to increase the competitiveness in the market. And there's also the new competitor, Esker, that has entered the Quebecois market. So there's an increase on competitiveness in a declining market, and this requires you to differentiate your business from your competitors. Quickly looking at the distribution channels, there are two ways. The away-from-home channel, there is, of course, demand. People run by the gas stations. There is no way of just drinking out of a jug of water. You need to buy bottled water, and the pricing is attractive. However, low volumes. Remember, higher price only helps you if the volumes are there. Transportation costs are higher in this regard, and there's also lower branding opportunities. People who buy bottled water in a gas station probably don't really care too much about the green part, that is green branding that is associated with your product. On the other hand, the modern trades, volume, big opportunity here. On the other hand, there are, of course, lower margins. You have a lower supplier power. The exclusivity of breaches that you've observed recently, and the incentives. So again, reduce the risk of the dependency on the distribution by having a balanced portfolio. You have that right now, and we see that for you going forward. A quick, more detailed look with regards to the modern trades. We recommend that you explore new opportunities, new partnerships going forward. One opportunity would be IGA. There's a large number of stores in Quebec. They are marketing in green products, so great branding partnership. And there's also a lower licensing fee, listing fee. Another alternative, if IGA wouldn't work out, would be Metro. The listing fee is even lower, however, the brand fit isn't quite as good as with IGA. We recommend you renegotiate the exclusivity terms with Loblaw. And again, you want to do that after you explore those new partnerships, because we don't want you to increase the costs that are associated with this exclusivity agreement. So if you explore new opportunities, you have a higher negotiating power going forward. Looking at your product portfolio, at the moment, your single most important product is the 500 milliliter bottle of water. We see opportunities here to diversify your product selection and therefore increase revenue in this way. Increase bottle sizes. It's very easy to do. 1 liter bottles, 2 liter bottles, and that these ones you can sell in both distribution channels. 4 gallon jugs. Market to corporations, hotels, and municipalities. Again, this addresses the away-from-home channel rather than the modern trades channels and helps you to balance this distribution portfolios. Looking also into new product opportunities, the main criteria that we saw for new products is you have to leverage your core competencies, you have to maintain the brand image, so really only new products that are based on water, which is your main product. So examples would be vitamin water or other sorts of flavored water, for example, green tea products. Marketing. Currently, it's almost only PR-based and non-conventional. This is low cost, this is great. However, going forward, we see you splitting your budget in half and continuing 50% on the green initiatives that you're already engaged in, the 1% for for the environment, you definitely want to continue on with that. That is very important for the brand. However, you have to increase your communication strategies, and we see half of your budget going forward going into this direction. Looking a little bit closer with regards to the communication strategies, event sponsorships, a great opportunity if you choose events with a green focus. Trail races, for example, very popular in Quebec. Bike races, again. Partner with sports clubs. We see a great opportunity here to have partner with the Montreal Canadiens. They're very concerned about the environment as well, about sustainability. If you can sell your water bottles in the stadium, fantastic opportunity. Increase the in-store visibility is also important. You don't only want to address those people that go to trail races and bike races. You have to increase your shelf presence. So again, negotiate better shelf visibility with your partners. And there's the opportunity, if you find partners like IGA that have a little bit lower listing fees, you can spend the rest of the money for the incentives to get you a better shelf price. So increase your sales capability. Also, that is necessary to manage all these opportunities. We see 1 or 2 additional sales personnel going forward. Looking at the strategy forward for Western Canada. First of all, looking at the Canadian market overall. There's Quebec. The market share within the bottling market is 22%. You're already there. Ontario, it's a large market, huge market. However, there have been large declines. It's highly competitive. And your brand is not as highly valued there, so don't go there. The other markets, Maritimes, Manitoba, Alberta, smaller markets, and not necessarily fit for your brand. We see the biggest fit with British Columbia.
Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, just change the slide. So why British Columbia? What else outlined there? Brand fit. You have products to market to the outdoor and green community. Short-term plans. How do you move into British Columbia? You already have small amounts of sales. However, you want to increase those sales. In the short term, you have to definitely increase the marketing efforts. We see you adding 2 to 3 people with regards to your sales staff and really investing into these promotional events. Again, the same idea, trail races, finding your sports club partnership. Strategic partnership with grocery stores. We see it going forward. Sobeys as a great opportunity. They have a great number of stores. Again, the green focus. And they have a really low licensing fee. You don't want to pay $20,000 to Safeway that don't have the brand fit that Sobeys has and ask a lot more money. Transportation costs, of course, a big issue for Nair. So we see you, first of all, transporting larger volumes. Water is not going anywhere. Long term, however, you want to reduce these transportation costs by the acquisition of a spring or a glacier-fed water source so that you can get the water right from the sea and lower the transportation capabilities. Important criteria when you source this spring or glacier-fed water source, the quality of the water, the availability water rights, again, CSR environmental aspects, and the availability and potential with regards to bottling capabilities. Ideally, you buy this, the QA/QC, and again, transport opportunities from and to this water source. So in order to talk about other opportunities that we see outside of Canada, I now going to turn it over to Jason, who's going to explore that aspect.
Thank you, Karina. Focusing in on entry into the U.S. market, as you know, the U.S. is a massive consumer market. Over 300 million people, lots of disposable income. Bottled water is a product that everyone knows and enjoys. But the problem is it's a very strong competitive landscape, lots of very well-financed, well-established brands and players there. And there's also significant entry costs into the U.S. That a small company like may incur, and then with the retreat may be very bad. But taking a step back, looking at the portfolio that's held in Catterton Partners, we believe that there's some ways to leverage into the U.S. with some other portfolio holdings. A clear opportunity exists between Naya Water and Sweet Leaf Teas. Sweet Leaf is an established brand in the U.S. They have an established distribution network, and we believe that a partnership or something of that nature would be very effective. And we encourage you to go to Naya and Sweet Leaf and get those talks started. You are the owner of both companies. You have board seats. You can make this happen. The CEO and presidents will listen to you. And there may be other opportunities within the portfolio. It's mutually beneficial to both of the companies. It makes sense. It's a way to grow both companies in your portfolio and really create value within Catterton. Maya Water can have piggyback on distribution channels in the U.S., piggyback on the experience gained by Sweet Leaf. There's bundled sales opportunities, and they can be privy to market data and nuances. Maybe certain things sell better in various regions with the U.S. And they may gain some expertise on flavored waters from Sweet Leaf that they can then bring to the Canadian market. For Sweet Leaf, it also makes sense. They can then sell into Quebec, a francophone market, which a U.S. company would have a really hard time penetrating, and Naya would really be able to provide expertise and also a distribution channel there. And the relationships are key as well. So as we see it, Naya, you cut a deal between the two companies, have a certain amount of Naya water going into the Sweet Leaf distribution network, being sold through their distribution channels, and vice versa up into Quebec from Sweet Leaf. And having rail, a very cheap, effective transportation method to the two respective distribution nodes, and then piggybacking on each other's capabilities, a mutually beneficial arrangement. Taking a step back, as you know, Catterton Partners, private equity is all about creating value, and we're going to focus on some of the financials. As we estimate, based on Naya's current market share in Quebec and the size of the market there, Naya is about a $17 million revenue per year company, drilling down about a 6% net profit, about $1 million per year in net income. We believe that you at Catterton got a great deal picking up Naya at a 30 times PE multiple, something that makes sense, a $30 million investment. How do you grow this investment? The incremental investment in marketing, CSR initiatives that Karina outlined, the expansion to BC, and more effectively using the Quebec network, and the possible relationship with Sweet Leaf, we believe will require an incremental $25 million investment, and with specifics on increasing bottling capacity, that sort of thing. So as we see it with the current revenues of about $17 million, the initiatives with further leveraging the CSR and the marketing, the brand, could add anywhere between $5 and $10 million incremental revenue. The various other initiatives, the Sweet Leaf could add another 10 to 15 million. The spring acquisition in BC and really moving into BC in time could add up to 5 to 15 million in incremental revenue. We believe that following our plan, we could have revenue growth in the next 3 to 5 years, anywhere between from 17 million to 44 to 77 million. That's 2.5 times to over the 4 times target in revenue growth that was outlined in your plan that you're going to propose to Naya. So in private equity, like any investment fund, creating value is the key metric. Does this create value? A $30 million investment currently, $25 million incremental investment, and with moving up to 44 to 77 million in revenues, approximately the same profit margins and same market multiples, we believe the value of the investment 3 to 5 years from now is worth up to $108 million. And that's with the same metrics in terms of price PE multiples. So that's an incremental $55 million in absolute value generated by that $25 million incremental to the $25 million. In 3 to 5 years, that's 18% compounded annual growth within the fund, which is well above the hurdle rate, and it makes sense. It's beating the cost of capital. It's beating the risk you're taking on by the investment, and it really makes sense. When you come to that stage where you're comfortable with Naya is, you have to start thinking about an exit strategy as well. And we think as you grow the company, there'll be a lot of potential buyers, potentially Nestle or other brands that are competing against Naya that want to enter into Quebec. You could IPO it. Put it out to the public. There may be appetite. Merge with Sweet Leaf or any other synergistic partners within the portfolio, an exit vehicle for 2 of your holdings, or continue growing. Maybe there's lots more expansion. The brand's taking off. You can really take this to the next level. You're probably curious about the timeline of how we plan to execute our plan and alternatives not pursued, and I'll leave Chuck to talk about that.
Thanks, Jason. So one of the things that's important to consider in any investment is when is this money going to come in? When are you going to have to make these expenditures? And when are you going to see that payback? So we've segmented our timeline into 5 or 6 different sections here. For the next 30 days, it's important that you review our presentation, you review the supporting materials, and you prepare those questions and you research those questions to make sure that you have all the information necessary for Mr. Cote's presentation. And you gather detailed information on the Sweet Leaf distribution network, so you're able to make that pitch to Mr. Cote about partnering together to enter into the Northeast market. For the next 6 months, put the management of Sweet Leaf and Naya together. As Jason outlined, you own both companies, take both CEOs, put them in a room, and get them to find a deal that makes sense. Open negotiations with BC retailers, and you begin exploring that BC distribution network. 6 to 12 months, begin marketing in BC and you begin marketing in the northeastern United States and begin shipping by train Naya into core BC and northeast US markets. It's very important to create that brand awareness. Naya is still a brand that is recognized in different parts, but it's important to bring that resurgence of that Naya brand back into these core markets so people understand and begin that search for a BC Spring license, as Karina outlined. For the next 1 to 3 years, acquiring that BC Spring license and constructing that facility in order to be able to distribute from the western side of Canada and begin distributing through partnership with Sweetleaf into the northeastern United States. 3 to 5 years, it's time to reevaluate the market. Where is the market for bottled water? Consider using BC to launch into the Pacific Northwest if it presents itself as a great growth opportunity, and it's time to look at that liquidation event. In a private equity firm, a 5-year timeline for holding on to a business, getting that revenue up, flipping it out, and paying back your investors is perfectly reasonable. Some alternatives that Mr. Cote made, we believe you should have some serious concerns about these. First one would be acquisition. Growing through acquisition, either geographically or into a new product. This would be a serious concern because you have a loss of brand equity. One of the greatest things about Naya is the fact that Naya has that brand equity as that green product, that environmentally sensitive product. If you purchase another company, there's a high financial cost to both purchasing and rebranding that company and turning that facility around. The next one would be national expansion, going completely across Canada. Again, distribution costs to this are extremely high. The volume produced for the distribution cost per bottle sold is just not there. The brand development cost, there's a price war in Ontario. Essentially, this is just beyond the capabilities of your company, both financially, in terms of management resources, and in the volume of water that you produce. Alternative number 3, launch a juice brand. Direct product diversification. There's a high barrier to entry in this. Its production and testing setup is very high. Essentially, this is a low-margin business with a high cost and high barrier to entry, means a long payback period. Long payback period is not what private equity exists for. Alternative number 4 would be a radical shift into the water delivery, radical shift in the way water is delivered to consumers. Again, this would be outside the capabilities of Naya. Naya is just not that company. It's positioned to be a first mover into a radical paradigm shift in the way a product is delivered to a consumer. Consumer retraining and the market retraining would just cost a significant amount in both time and money, and it's just not within the core capabilities of Naya, and that is not really a problem. So in conclusion, we'd just like to review a few things from the presentation as we presented them. Our recommendation, within the context of Naya Water's capabilities, growing revenues through extending the product offering, expanding geographically into core markets, leveraging the environmental leadership and brand to develop those new markets and to expand into your current market, control costs through focused distribution, and strategic partnerships with companies already within your portfolio. Key questions. What will it take to meet this target? As Jason outlined, an additional $25 million CapEx over the next 3 to 5 years. 1 to 5 years, excuse me. What changes to strategy are necessary? Focused distribution and selecting high-value entry markets, such as the BC market, select core markets in the northeastern United States, and perhaps in the long run, the Pacific Northwest, really following that green movement where you can leverage your brand equity. Should Naya expand geographically? Yes, into the northeastern U.S. and BC and potentially into the Pacific Northwest. Product line diversification, only in water-centered lines. Things where you can use the base water of Naya and add small additives to it, not a complete reintroduction of new brands. What new markets to look at? Again, the northeastern United States with a partnership with Greenleaf and using BC as a portal to the U.S., Pacific Northwest, and Western Canada as those markets mature. In summary, the additional CapEx required, $25 million. Where you're sitting at right now, $17 million revenue, $1 million profits. Revenue in 3 to 5 years, 2.6 to 4.6 times multiple. Profit in 3 to 5 years, about the same, 2.6 to 4.6. A business valuation in 3 to 5 years of $108 million. A return on investment of about 18% compounded. How do you make money in water? Revisiting the graph that Heather put up. We get the increase in revenue with the decrease in cost are the most important things to consider. We've shown you different ways to increase your revenue through new products in different regions in which you have to enter. Decrease your cost through manufacturing as you expand throughout to BC. You get more cost advantages, especially in the distribution. And the marketing and sales, as you reach those focused markets, the dollars spent in advertising per bottle sold will go down. So an outside look, what we were hired for and what we're here today is to prepare you for this presentation with Mr. Cote. One of the things Mr. Cote mentioned is that all the problems of NAIA may be associated with the recession. We don't necessarily believe that is true. You hired us to give you a better look, a more complete look at the market as it stands today. We feel we have done that. We've shown that a methodical and sensible plan within NAIA's core capabilities. Again, we'd like to thank you very much for your time, Mr. Jones. We're very happy to answer any questions you may have and work with you over the next month towards your presentation with Mr. Cote.
Thank you very much.
What is that slide?
Thank you very much, University of Calgary. There will now be 15 minutes of question and answers from the judges.
Can you expand a little bit about how we should handle, or how I should expect him to tell us to handle, the David Suzuki, environmental, okay?
That's a great question, and it's a significant concern, especially when you get municipalities. Calgary, for example, a leading alderman in Calgary has gone towards the banning of bottled water in City Hall. One of the things that Karina outlined is moving to those larger water delivery systems, the 4-gallon jugs and things that can be marketed directly to those municipalities. As well, one of the things your company already does, you have a leading environmental audit firm in Europe auditing your company annually to show the reduced energy consumption and the reduced carbon footprint of your company on an annual basis. Comparatively, NAIA stacks up extremely well against its competitors in terms of environmental footprint, and we believe quite strongly you'll continue to do so, and that'll be a point of differentiation in the market.
I'm interested by your proposal to have NAIA and Sweetleaf get together. I'm curious, though, since the compensation for both of the leaders is driven by the profitability of the business, how do I determine what is a fair arrangement between them? Because obviously Sweetleaf is going to think that NAIA is getting more out of the relationship, and NAIA may argue that Sweetleaf is getting more out of the relationship.
Before you have the two CEOs in the room, you have to fully quantify the distribution networks of each and the capabilities. We believe that a deal where equal amounts of product flow each way and so it's an equal deal, so that way there's not like all the products flowing from NAIA and barely anything's going up to Sweetleaf. And like you said, there's also opportunities for bundling the products together and that sort of thing that may drive further sales of the respective products.
I'm not really sure, like, can you quantify, like, specifically what are the factors that I should consider? Is it sort of volume?
Yes. Well, you first have to look at how big of an area Sweetleaf is servicing and their capabilities. If they're selling 100,000 cases of Sweetleaf tea and NAIA is selling half that, then you should send a proportionate amounts, relatively speaking, and that way the relative impacts to profitability in that won't be such a hit to either partner.
You suggested that we either buy a spring in BC or enter the U.S. Northeast. Could you expand a little bit on the perceived risk that you see for a Quebec company trying to buy a spring in BC or entering a very conservative market in the northeastern United States?
Yeah, I think we can address both of those. One of the reasons for pursuing BC as an option is, in fact, the availability of the high-quality spring-type glacier-fed water that would be appropriate for NAIA. Chuck emphatically ruled out acquisitions of other types of water bottlers, distributors, manufacturers, because they wouldn't have that core essential ingredient of the high-quality water that NAIA relies on. So in pursuing an acquisition in BC, what you would be looking at is possibly an untapped spring, or possibly one of the companies that's suffering under the current changing landscape of water consumption. There may be some small glacier-fed water bottlers in BC that are looking to sell. And the acquisition of a BC stream or production facility by a Quebec company, I don't think that would be too dramatic. You know, in the Canadian landscape, a Quebec firm moving to BC would not be unheard of. And the reason to pursue the northwestern United States from there is simply NAIA's stated desire to keep transportation costs, which are high costs both monetarily and environmentally, low. So the BC is a perfect launching pad into that market.
I've just paid 30 times earnings for this company. Is there anything, any part of your plan where I wouldn't have to spend an additional $25 million in the short term? I was hoping that this company could provide the returns without having to make that kind of substantial investment.
You stated one of your goals was to grow 4 times in terms of revenue, and we believe that taking a step back and looking at the capabilities of the firm, if there's no more incremental investment in the firm, the cash flows coming off this business, you just can't expand revenues by 4 times in the stated time period as well of 3 years. Organically growing without a new infusion of cash will stretch the abilities of management, stretch the abilities of the cash flow generation within the firm, and we think ultimately lead to value destruction. We believe the incremental, as we demonstrated, incremental infusion of cash should pay off at a very handsome rate in the 3 to 5 year time frame. So we really recommend an infusion to support the capital budget.
If you suggest to expand into the northern U.S. market, one of the concerns that we have is that in the U.S. consumer tastes are possibly quite different than in Canada, and in particular, some of our competitors, Aquafina and Dasani, that are actually distilled water, they're not source water, have about 4 times as much market share proportionately in the US than they do in Canada. So that points to some very different consumer tastes. How would you address that?
This is an opportunity to leverage the trend that your colleague has already outlined. Drinking distilled water is actually not good for you. This trend, maybe not going as extreme as to tap water because of all the chlorine and fluorine that is still going to be installed into the tap water. However, it has been clearly shown that distilled water is just not good for you to drink. So you can leverage on this trend, being in the middle of that trend. Not quite tap water, but definitely not distilled water. And you have to obviously do the appropriate promotion on that, around that topic in order to leverage your market opportunities there.
You mentioned early in your presentation that we would, one of the strategies would be to increase the bottle sizes, right, to 1 liter, 2 liter, and I believe you said 4-gallon jug, correct? We're still talking about the same material from a packaging perspective, plastic, etc., or have you thought of other packaging strategies?
Well, we haven't presented alternative packaging strategies for you here today, but that's one of the things that is within NAIA's core capabilities. You have emerged as a leader in this field with reducing your energy consumption, reducing the amount of plastic, looking at new materials in the field. So we do definitely consider, or definitely suggest, that you continue that spend on environmental initiatives that you previously had, and that would definitely be one of the areas of focus. With regards to the bigger products, that serves a similar goal, which is reducing the overall amount of packaging. And further down the road, if the trends do go to large-scale bulk water consumption, that's NAIA's way of easing into that market.
As I outlined to you, I paid 30 times earnings. Just suggest me 3 elements that I should be tracking to understand that the plan is or not working and would make me decide to sell a business to somebody who wants it more than I do.
Well, clearly you have to track revenues on a quarterly basis as management reports to you. As a new initiative is incurred, such as various partnerships and that sort of thing, if you see the resultant increase in revenue, that's a very, very favorable indication that that's working. The plan is executing as you intended. Also, profitability. In essence, you've got to track the costs. Make sure the costs are not increasing faster than the rate of revenue increase. And finally, just the amount of water you're selling. Also, the partners that are interested in your product. As your product starts to, the brand, the cachet of it increases and people know about the green initiatives. If there's more and more people contacting your salespeople, if it's easier, if there's more sales per sales visit, that sort of nature, those are all very positive indications of the brand's success, in addition to the financial metrics, which you have to track very closely.
You've suggested that I commit another $25 million to your strategy. What if Mr. Cote comes to me and says that on a per liter basis, he can acquire Glacier water at $18 million, and then instead of having to triple revenues off the current base, all you've got to do is double it? What's wrong with that strategy?
If it is possible for him to acquire Glacier, then the primary consideration, as well as the financial considerations in that acquisition, would be the brand strength of Glacier and how easily the brand strength of Glacier could be transferred to leverage the benefits of the Naya brand across. If Glacier has a significantly different taste in the market, if they're not known as that green leader, if they're not a green leader, then the brand equity associated with that purchase may not be there. If the brand equity of Glacier is similar to the brand equity of Naya, then you can compare them on an apples-to-apples basis, and that would be an acquisition that could potentially move forward.
If I may add to it, it's also you have to always revisit the capabilities. It's not just the glacier source. You also have to think of the distribution network and the transportation costs that are associated with this, and that's going to add to the price of $18 million in addition.
You mentioned when you were talking to us that there are a few things that we should look at that if Mr. Cote presented to us, we should have some concerns about. Are there any elements of your plan that we should be concerned about if he doesn't present them to us? What are the key elements of your plan that you would expect him to present?
Well, I think emphasizing again the capabilities of Naya as an organization, be they financial or human capital, and piggybacking on that is simply the quality and the source of the water. It's crucial that Naya remain that leader in environmental stewardship, in natural water quality, and grow. Any plan needs to represent realistic growth opportunities for an organization with the capabilities of Naya.
One company that has done very well recently and has sort of come out of nowhere and blindsided Naya a little bit has been ESCA in Quebec. We were just wondering, why did that happen? Could that have been prevented? Is there something that they missed?
I think they have a really good deal in the promotional aspect of their company, and we see this as a must-do for Naya going forward. Naya has so far worked on a PR-based business, hasn't really invested too much into promotion. They have built a great brand name. Now they have to get it out in the community. This is the way, and to get the market back from ESCA, get the market from Nestle before also as Nestle comes in and steals more of Naya's market share in Quebec.
I understand the don't get into Ontario because of the competitive pressures, et cetera, et cetera. Can you just help me understand why you decided to skip every other province till we got to BC? Just curious.
There's two leading factors towards deciding on BC, actually three. Number one is the large proponent of springs, the availability to purchase water and water licenses in BC. The population densities, especially in the major centers of BC, are more concentrated, as well as the green shift. The green movement is much stronger in BC, and the brand image and the reputation of Naya will resonate much more easily and much closer to home with residents in BC than it may in residents of Alberta, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba, for example.
You haven't expanded much on Mr. Cote's environmental strategy. Try to make me understand why I should support him in spending so much money if it's not relevant to any of our competitors.
And again, it's all about brand differentiation here. You're in a highly competitive market. The market overall is declining, so you have to differentiate yourself. And it's water. It's going to be hard to differentiate water from water. So building a name based on CSR, based on the green movement, which is highly regarded in society, especially in provinces as Quebec as well as British Columbia, is a great opportunity here. We see Mr. Cote's initiatives as being really valuable for the brand of Naya Waters. And again, this is something you should be looking into pursuing forward. However, you may want to reduce a little bit of it in order to shift it to the promotional aspects, but only part of it. Don't sacrifice the CSR initiatives in complete.
Right. I've got Mr. Cote and his team working hard to put together a strategy. At the same time, I've hired you unbeknownst to him. How do I keep him from resigning when he hears that I went sort of before I even heard what he had to say and hired you?
Well, the acquisition was recent, and you've put a very large stretch goal in front of him. It's clear that you're very aggressive, you're results orientated, and it's not unlikely that he would expect that you would have done a lot of research, have a lot of expectations, and hired outside consultants, other people who are experts, just to make sure that keep him truthful. He's been with Naya for a while. He knows the company well, and within the vehicle of the private equity firm, the potential for cash infusion, he probably can see that he can grow the company and really profit himself by implementing aspects of his plan as well as our elements of our plan. So there's lots of potential for value or earnings generation for him. So we believe that the shot to his ego won't be that severe, and he'll move forward.
We've got a minute left. Okay, so I would like to give it back to you and just ask you if you have anything else that you would have wanted to mention to us or expand upon, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for the question. I'd like to take the opportunity just to restate our recommendation for your company and the reasons behind it. We believe that Naya Water should expand geographically into the northeastern United States with a partnership with the brands within your portfolio, expand into BC through the acquisition of a spring or a water license in that area to leverage the brand and that green sense that comes along with Naya Waters, use BC as an established platform to low-cost transportation launch into the Pacific Northwest, slight product differentiation based entirely on that water base, so either it's vitamin additives or flavor additives that go into that water, focusing again on that brand. A marketing differentiation strategy where you move away from 100% CSR and green initiatives to 50-50, where 50% of that is now into the promotional aspect of it, where you're getting out more into the community to take on brands like ESCA and competitors who may have...
Thank you, Calgary. Please finish your sentence.
And in conclusion, we believe firmly that $25 million additional investment will pay off significantly when you exit out of this firm in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.